All right. Welcome everybody to our first WebEx virtual event for the College of Arts and Sciences. I am Juliana Sainholtz, the Alumni Director for the college. Please bear with us if there are any complications throughout this process. This is our, as I said, first virtual attempt to engage alumni. So I am here with three alumni interviewers. They are going to be interviewing our Dean, Valerio Ferme, who started this past July. So he's coming to the end of his first year as Dean of the college. He's going to share a little bit about himself, how he got here, where we're going, which has changed quite a bit over the past few months. So without further ado, I'm going to have our interviewers introduce themselves, and then Valerio's going to talk for a little while.
My name is Elena Jenkins. I'm a 2015 UC grad, studied journalism and environmental studies, both in A&S, and I am a freelancer, digital marketing freelancer.
My name is Maurice Stewart. I am 2016 graduate of A&S, University of Cincinnati, and the 2019 Outstanding Young Alumnus for the college.
My name is Mark Coleman. I'm sorry you can't see me. I'm a 1982 German Studies grad and 1984 Master's in German Literature.
All right, and I'm sorry, before Valerio chimes in, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the chat box and send to all participants, and I will make sure that I get to them throughout the presentation.
So I'll be pretty quick in terms of just giving you my background. I was born in Italy, lived there for 19 years. I'm the child of a half American, half Italian woman and a half Italian, half Spanish man. My parents, obviously. I'm one of 9 kids. Moved to the States for college, did my college. Then I was, believe it or not, a rowing coach for a few years. I went back to get my master's in comparative literature and Italian, got my PhD in comparative literature from UC Berkeley, moved to the University of Colorado where I was for 19 years, almost 19 years, 18 years. I spent then 2 years as a dean at the Northern Arizona University before coming here. So that's kind of like a brief sort of summary of who I am. Those of you who don't know me, but obviously some of you do know me. Came into this job July 7th of 2019, and it's been a little bit of a whirlwind. We first had to deal with a sort of a deficit on both sides of our budget. One, because we have this responsibility-centered management that we were in a deficit for, and then because of that, we also had some problems on the other side on the expense budget anyway. But, as of March, we finally pulled out officially from the revenue side budget deficit, which was a big success in some ways. And as soon as we did that, we entered into a new phase of what is going to happen now. And that has been obviously the, sort of the coronavirus issues that we are facing now. Substantial budget repercussions both for this year and next year, and we are in the process of addressing these in a as calm a manner we can, but it is a pretty big hole that we have to come out of. So we are putting together a plan. Hopefully we will start chipping away at what the requests for from the budget side of things is to manage to survive next year. We're especially concerned right now about fiscal year 21 and coming out on a sort of the turbulent waters on that side. Having said that, we've had a really great year overall. We have, in terms of fundraising, we've had the best year in fundraising ever. We've raised over $12 million this year with 2 major gifts totaling over over $8 million, and a number of other sort of good gifts in that way. We've had some really terrific, we've had a record enrollment, obviously undergrad students that has been, I think the number was 8,699 students for this year in undergrad. We have some very distinguished faculty who are doing great work in a number of areas. I think we have some good, exciting work that is happening in terms of changing structures in the college, moving some people together in a fashion that I think will highlight the quality of what they do. And we have also created a strategic plan that emphasizes both inclusive excellence and desire to create centers of excellence in some places, but also basically how do we upgrade even more the quality of what we do in our teaching and pedagogy for students. So that is a very brief summary, but I think we need to keep it brief because I know that people want to ask questions at some point. So I think we should just move with the questions that I'm going to be asked, and then we can open the forum. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Val. I think I'm supposed to get off here. So my first question is, which specific events in your past have helped to inform your approach to our current challenges at UC and NANS?
So, well, growing up in a big family of 9 kids helps. You have to negotiate a lot of crises at all times, and sort of alliances and all of that stuff. But I think actually it has informed even what I did afterwards. So, I played sports growing up, all through my life, and then, as I said, I actually rowed in college, and that's a very demanding sport in terms of teamwork. If you don't row together, you go nowhere. And so it looks very nice when you look at it from the shore. It's very painful when you're in the boat, but you have to make sure that your pain is in tune with everybody else's. So just having that idea of teamwork has been really helpful. And the other thing, I think I have to thank my parents for being the kind of parents that pushed me not to be, complacent. And so that attitude has carried forth in, wanting to, my mother especially would say, like, if I didn't have an answer, don't be content with just the first answer that comes to your head. Go and find the information. So I try to, when I try to make decisions, for example, it's really important for me to get as many facts as I can, and before I make decisions, and make sure that my decisions are informed by good data, by good good conversations, and so that I get all sides of the issue. So I think those are the things that I would say have helped.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question.
Yep.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yeah, you were muted briefly, Maurice.
Oh, sorry about that. So my next question is, with coronavirus seeming to be a long-term obstacle, how has it changed your vision for the college? I think you spoke a little bit about it, but if you can just elaborate a little more.
Yeah, it's something that, I mean, one of the things that it has done is that it has forced us to have what I call a movable plan, because it's very difficult right now to plan specific actions, because we can be thinking about something one day and the following day we get information that actually makes our plans change. So being flexible, being able to sort of think on your feet, and but also communicate that, because I think people want definite answers, and sometimes it's hard to give people definite answers. So you have to kind of say, look, this is what we're thinking about today, and we can project it out to a certain degree, but there might be other factors. So I mean, as we all know, people are predicting the possibility of another spike. And so what would that spike do to our ability to enroll in people in face-to-face classes in the fall? How do we adapt to that? How do we prepare for those things? So I think, that's one thing. It has certainly completely blown away any kind of idea of, okay, now we have an easy budget year, because I mean, in fact, it's now completely turned into a different ball game. But I think we're working our best to do what we can of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my question for you is, which kind of goes off of both those questions, what parallels in your study of literature do you find that relate to our situation today?
Well, that's actually an excellent question, because I have written a book on Boccaccio's Decameron, which is a book about the Black Plague and what people do to sort of, well, both survive and entertain themselves during the time of the plague. Now, I don't think that the way these 10 characters who basically take off and go and, spend time in gardens and around Florence to tell each other stories would be the way that our health officials would advise us to behave. But it is certainly an interesting, it provides a very interesting sort of the symbolism of both the connection that people crave for in a time of isolation and fear, and the way that stories and the way we connect with other people can sometimes help us mitigate some of the impact. I mean, we all know that one of the, aside from the really, concerning and serious toll of death and pain that it has caused, but for the people who are in isolation, there are repercussions about, I mean, in the Decameron, it talks about the melancholy that comes from being in a situation where, in that case, actually 30 to 40% of all the population died. And so the way that you fight the melancholy is through human contact. So there is, those having those in the background, and I didn't only read that. I've read the Plague by Albert Camus. Some of these stories that in fact talk about, like I've read a lot of literature on AIDS. So there's very similar situations in terms of knowing, of experiencing something that is out of your control, and how do you try to sort of address that. So personally, having that background has helped me, but I think it also alerts me to what sometimes we don't think about in these times, which is how people need to connect and tell stories to each other, and to be able to sort of keep that connection going.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's quarantine. Have you developed any new hobbies to while away the hours?
Well, this is not a new hobby, but it's certainly one that I've increased, which is eating a lot and gaining weight. Well, partly it's because look, I have a bad habit of eating when I'm stressed, and I mean, I can't say that I'm always stressed, but you get into things and you start eating, and obviously I don't have a lot of the same outlets that I used to have before. In terms of, or I've mitigated those in terms of going out, running, doing those kind of things. So the other habit that I have is I now do puzzles with my grandchildren, because they're small enough that they're starting to learn doing that. So we do a lot of that, and that's kind of a fun thing to do.
Great. So adding on to that, once this is over, what's one of the first things you're going to do? Whether professionally, personally, what's one of the first things that you want to do? Maybe go to dinner.
Lose weight and travel. Well, lose weight, and then sleep a lot, because I haven't been getting a lot of sleep. So those two things I think will be at the top of my list. That's my answer. I'm not going to go further. I mean, I could go further, but that's my.
Thank you.
And I'll just jump right into this next question. So with this, all of us have been remote learning the past, well, really all the students have been remote learning the past semester, the half of it. How has that been going for not just the students, but also the staff?
Well, I think that was the biggest, the biggest challenge. And I want to say two things. Is one, we had incredible, I mean, our faculty, our heads, and our staff really did, fantastic work in turning around and providing this. Sometimes the results may have been mixed, but I think generally speaking, being able to turn classes that were in person into some form of remote online teaching was not easy for many people, and especially people who have not been accustomed to that. So that's one thing. I also think that the students were very understanding. I mean, they actually came through in that way. I mean, and in some cases, it created, in fact, a closer bond between the faculty and the students. But everybody really did a great job of at least trying to get us to the finish line. I think if this persists, we obviously want to do better in terms of how we provide our online teaching, because this was an emergency, and if we can plan ahead and think, well, what if we have to actually have a majority of our courses online in the fall, then how are we going to do it better so that in fact we are producing classes that are the equivalent of what they would have been in person. Some of us know that in fact you can have high quality online classes, and we already teach them that way. So that the reality is, how do we make sure that we elevate the level of everybody? But it was a big transition. It was a costly transition in terms of like just the mental ability of people to do it, and getting it completed.
I'm going to ask you to use your crystal ball, Val. How long do you believe it will be before the university and the world, for that matter, overcome the effects of COVID-19?
Well, that is a tough question to answer. I mean, my answer to that is I'm actually gonna pass on that, because my philosophy is, we're trying to eat an elephant, and you eat an elephant just like you eat everything else, one bite at a time. And so I think, I mean, obviously the obvious answer is, the hope is that they can find a vaccine fairly quickly, that it is, it goes through its testing and whatever it needs to be done, and that will be the answer. But I think the lessons that this has taught us are the things that we need to carry forth. I mean, financially, I can tell you that the impact is going to be felt, this year, next year, and the year after, not because we expect I mean, hopefully we won't continue to have the budgetary impasse on us, but I mean, it is going to be felt because the state has cut, for example, its state support of instruction, which is at $43 million for the university. And so, and they haven't said, oh, by the way, this is coming back. So just like it happened in the downturn in 2007 and 2008, it took quite a while before we even started seeing some of that money coming back. So that's one cut. The other one is that, we have a hiring freeze. So there are departments that are losing faculty to retirement or to, they're going somewhere else. We can't really do much in terms of replacing them. And that takes a while to get back to speed. So it's going to take a while to get back to normal.
I think that's a fair answer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. And you spoke a little bit about the financial impacts of that it will have on ANS. If you could just dive a little deeper into that. You mentioned how we've had a record year in fundraising and some of the other ways that we've been able to generate income. You talk about enrollment. How if you could talk a little bit about that and how that affects our
I mean, I can. I mean, if you really want to hear the grim details, is we have currently a 20% impact. So we were supposed to have a tax for this year that was about 3%, which is totals to like $1.4 million, which means that we have to generate more revenue than that number in order to actually be on the positive side of the revenue. The coronavirus and these cuts, for example, the $43 million that comes from the state and some of the other projections have raised that now to a 20% cut. That is the equivalent of a $9.4 million impact on the college budget. And the problem with that is that we already have a very lean budget. And and this is not a problem that I mean, that it's just the way it is. Our faculty, or tenure track faculty and educator faculty have a collective bargaining agreement negotiated through the union that basically, make sure that they are not part really of our budget considerations. So we have to think about where do we get these cuts out of a budget that I'm looking at right now is a little bit over $11 million. So that would be 84% of our budget, and it would basically mean that I would have to lay off all of my staff. Now, that's the sort of like the really sort of the bleak picture. Now, the reality is that there are some things we can do, and we have already projected cuts in a number of areas, and we will probably have to put some furloughs in action as we move forward. We're trying to mitigate that by, in fact, the generosity of our donors. Now, you mentioned a fundraising year that was a banner year. Unfortunately, a lot of what we raised was in endowments, and endowments are restricted money. You can't use them to actually help you with sort of the current, let's call it cash crisis. So you need to have more discretionary funds. You need to have funds that are local in order to cover what is general funds expenses that you can no longer cover. So I have a plan tomorrow. Actually, I have an all-college meeting in which I will sort of, I don't want to call it reveal, but I have a two-phase plan. One is to take sort of immediate action and try to sort of do the initial cuts and projections, and then a longer plan, which really is actually something that we will take to our donor base and to the alumni too, which is we need to fundraise a whole bunch of discretionary funding. And that's really what we're looking at for, starting basically in August and throughout next year, is to sort of close some of the holes. And we've already had some good conversation with some of our donors and that have contributed significantly in the past, who are actually very happy to help us. But we also understand that what is hitting us is hitting you. So I mean, this is it's not like we can go to people and say, hey, give us more money, because we know that many people are in the same situation of having either having been furloughed, lost jobs, etc. So it's a delicate situation, and that's why I said before, we can only take it one step at a time, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Val.
Yep, you're welcome.
And you kind of jumped into this with talking about like what other people are going through on top of the college themselves right now. How does the focus on arts and sciences help prepare students for the employment outlook right now?
Well, so there are two things that I think that everybody's talking about being creative, and I think some of our students can be more creative than others in sort of diversifying the way they look for employment, or they look for repurposing what they do. And I think that's one of the advantages that we do have in liberal arts education and arts and sciences, is the ability to think outside the box, and also develop certain areas of skills, including communication and critical thinking, that are very valuable in a time of crisis. In a time of crisis, you need people who can think outside the box. And I don't want to bring my example to this, but I do want to say that I actually feel that very much so right now in this moment of crisis. It is helping me also sort of handle this in a way that is not, oh my gosh, I have a $9 million hole and I don't know how to cover it. I'm going to run screaming and somewhere and hide. I think what it has allowed me to do is sort of try to be rational about it, think about the ways that we can be creative. And I look at the way we've been responding in this college has been very much participatory qualities that I think, in fact, some of the things that we do, and I speak from a literature personality, is knowing other human beings' experiences, knowing really being able to understand what empathy means, understanding what people coming from other sides do. Some of the work that we do in courses are about listening to other people's opinions and having conversations in classes about those. But in the sciences is setting up experiments and figuring out, okay, what is the methodology that we want to follow. Those things help, generally speaking. The way of critical thinking and methodology that we use in much of our both scientific methods, but also in the literary fields, in a general sense, help. And I think they can actually help being more flexible and more, as I said, diverse in how you handle crises and reinvent yourself. And I think that's really what is important moving forward.
Building a little bit on that, Val, what do you tell students who are wondering whether it's a good idea to enroll in UC this fall versus just taking a gap year?
That's so I don't know if you know, but I've been holding town halls with parents every Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've done it for the last 3 weeks, and I'm going until the end of this month. So I'm one more week of this. And this is a constant question that I get. I mean, because a lot of parents are thinking, well, if my kid is going to have to take all their courses online, I don't want to take this. And I actually understand that very well. I mean, and this is one of the reasons why we're trying to still project at least some form of face-to-face instruction in very safe conditions, if we can do that. So, I think there are two ways of looking at it. One is a very practical aspect. Yeah, you can take your gap year, but conversely, you could actually be building right now the kind of grit and resilience that is going to be needed for the workforce. I mean, I had a great conversation last night with one of the parents who said, this could be a really transformational experience for kids because, and this were his words, our kids have grown up a little bit soft. This is the kind of experience that will toughen them up, and having to deal with a situation that is not perfect, so they don't come to the perfect campus, they're not handheld all the way through, can in fact be the kind of experience that will be transformative for my son and his generation. And I thought that's a really interesting way of putting it. And I would think that it is precisely this idea that you need to adapt, you need to learn how to think outside the box and do something differently. So I think that would be one of the things that I would advise. The second one is, I think, yes, you can take the gap year and it would be great, but you're going into a gap year where you're in a gap. I mean, if this holds, I mean, you can't even enjoy the gap year. I mean, there are people who do a gap year and go abroad and do things and have great experiences or go into work. There's not a lot of work. So in fact, this kind of experience can be the kind of growth that gives you continue, and maybe you wait for the gap year somewhere down the line as opposed to doing it now. But I do think that you need to get into your things, into your studies, and really move, because I think there are going to be opportunities 3-4 years down the line, and I don't know how many kids want to wait for those opportunities a lot longer. But I do get, and by the way, I change this all the time. I'm thinking, maybe it would be a great thing for a gap year. Wouldn't be great for us, but it certainly could be a good thing if the student has the ability to make the gap year something that is productive.
I think that's a great answer to that question.
Yeah. No, great answer. Thank you. So I'm gonna switch the tone.
If I can interject, Maurice, I'm sorry.
Of course.
I have a question from an attendee. A little bit lighter topic, but what do you think about Cincinnati, and are you happy here? Current situation aside.
So, well, I wish I hadn't spent the last 2 months at home so I could see Cincinnati. No, I actually really like it. I always tell, I tell a lot of people that my first thing when I came here for my interview, I was like, wow, it's really green here. And that to me was a discovery and a really positive thing. I mean, I've lived basically 21 years in fairly arid and dry climates, and I by the way, I do like dry climates, but the scenery, even though it's spectacular, sometimes tends to lack green. So I do like the green. I think Cincinnati is a town on the up move. I mean, where I'm living is there are a lot of people outside. There are a lot of people going about their business. And so I've really enjoyed it thus far. I like the diversity of the city. I think it's not, I've lived in smaller towns that tend to be a little bit more sort of less diverse in some ways, although I have to say that in Flagstaff, Arizona, the closeness with the Navajo and Hopi reservations made me become very aware about the plight of Native American people in a way that was I actually was seeking that in that place. So I mean, for me, it was actually a good thing. But no, I've loved being here. I think it's a really good place, and I've been thoroughly happy. I spend a lot of time looking outside, so when I have time, so it's good.
Good. Thank you. That's thank you for sharing that. So next question I have is what are some of the your biggest personal challenges during your first year as dean?
Well, personally is just, you're the new person. People need to learn how to trust you. People need to learn how to know that, when you talk with them, your intentions are true. So it's building those relationships. They're both professional and personal, but I think it is personal because if you don't have good personal relationships with the people you work, then it makes the professional. I think that's really the bottom line of all of it is making sure that you spend the time to get to know people, and sharing also your personal life, because that's also a way that you diminish some of the barriers with people, and you can then create good relation. Other than that, I mean, getting used to different rhythms. But I mean, generally speaking, I mean that's where I'm at.
No, thank you. And one thing I wanted to highlight, while during your first year, we actually met for lunch, and then also you had after on in November when I accepted the ANS Outstanding Young Alumnus Award. I think a couple weeks later we were at the Men of Honor dinner, and I felt so special because you actually came up to me like, "Hey, Maurice!" I'm like, I turned around like, "Oh my God, the dean recognized me." So you're very personable. I think excellent hire, and I look forward to your future leadership with the college. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, you kind of already went into this already, but what have you been doing to deal with the stress right now? I know you said you've been eating and you've been playing puzzles with your grandkids. Have you like with eating too? Have you learned to cook anything new? Have you done like banana bread like everybody else does?
So actually, so this I mean, so if you want to know the personal side, I mean, so now we're getting, I had established for myself in the past, I want to say the past 5-10 years, maybe more, with more regularity the last 5 years. When I get up in the morning, I do have sort of a journal. That's really helpful for me to reduce stress. I can actually write things out. I have 2 journals, a personal journal and a dean journal. So I write different things in those, and they help me sort of process things that I want to do or say, or even what has happened in my day. I also meditate, which it sounds a lot sort of like new agey, but in fact it is a good practice for me to quiet my mind. I have a hyperactive mind. I don't sleep a lot. So in fact, meditation helps me sort of slow things down. And so those 2 things really help me sort of control things in a way that I think does reduce the stress.
I was gonna say I write too, so that's pretty cool. I know a lot of people that meditate and they swear by it, so I completely get all of that.
Yeah.
One of the things I know we're all concerned about are being able to help. So what specific struggles are you hearing from students, and how can we specifically help?
So there's a very pragmatic struggle of some students that are, financially have been hit either because they can't work or their parents have lost their jobs. So we do have an emergency fund for students. We will probably be advertising some of that if it hasn't been already advertised. I know that there was a big push to get some emergency funding for students when this first hit. I think the other thing that is more, if you know students or if you know of ways to get close to students, one of the biggest concerns that I have is the mental health of students at this time. we already know that the mental health of students was a national crisis before COVID. And so, in fact, I think that has just been heightened. I had some really good conversations, but also they alerted me to the issues that students are facing, especially when they had to go back home and live at home and try to do their studies in environments that are not always conducive to studying, and the pressure that they felt to conform both to sort of family life, let's call it this way. I mean, I'll just give you an example of one student who said, you know, I have 4 younger siblings and they constantly interrupt me when I'm studying. And my parents never went to college. And so they think I'm here and I can do, you know, they'll say, oh, why don't you go and do this errand? Why don't you do this? And I'll say, well, I have a class right now. And I can see how those stresses build on students. So I think, you know, if there's any way that, in fact, there can be support structure by alumni to, in fact, provide you know, reassurance about why this is important. And we know, I do know that we have, through our enrollment people and our advising team, reached out to some to participate in conversations with students. And we also have, obviously, we've talked with some of our alumni about the kind of support. We have a couple of alumni who are, in fact, very interested in helping with the emergency fund that would help actually some of the students stay in college at a time when they might think about dropping out. So those are the things that are important from my perspective to do with students.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Great. And this next question I was going to ask was actually about alumni. The 3 of us being alumni, you know, what are, aside from the ways that you mentioned, do you have any other ways that we can continue to support arts and sciences during these times?
You know, I think, I mean, what you're doing is really important. And what I think we want, obviously, alumni to do is to continue to provide support, because it is what drives us. It is knowing that people are still engaged is really important. I always tell our alumni and our, you know, members of our different boards is I'm always interested in hearing ideas. We may not put them all into practice because it may not just work, but actually having ideas. And this is why I think it's really important to be open to teamwork, and having ideas from others can actually generate or create some spark that you didn't know about, and it might actually change your practices. Let me just give you an example of these town halls. The reason I started the town halls was that I had a conversation with a friend of mine. I mean, a 20 years of friendship, who is also a dean, and she said, you know, I'm thinking of doing a town hall with parents. And I thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. So I started it. And now actually half of the deans are also doing town halls because I shared that with them. But now I'm also thinking, hey, this can be a practice that I could do in a non-coronavirus environment, right? I mean, parents are going to always have questions about their freshmen enrolling and what is happening and this kind of stuff. So I could see this, in fact, becoming a practice that I do somewhere else. But that came from a conversation with someone else. So people have different ideas, and they can actually open your eyes to things that you are not thinking about. And so as alums, you know the university. You also, many of you are still here. Many of you have taken careers in different areas, or many of you have had experiences that are completely different now from what they were here. But you can also see, as you asked me about, you know, the connection between how did my degree or my time in A&S help me create a path in a different way. And sharing those experiences with students, for example, is always a great thing. At a certain point, I think we were trying to, in fact, get our students, our alumni, even during the remote class period, to talk with some of our students just to keep them going, right? I mean, say, you know, like, you can make it, you can do it, sort of like a rah-rah team. So I think those are some of the things that I would like to suggest that, in fact, alumni continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I have a question from a faculty member who is listening in right now. We're going to flip it to the alumni. He's wondering, for Dean Fairmay, what advice or suggestions, methods you might recommend to faculty who want to remain in touch with alumni, but also for Elena, Maurice, and Mark, what would you like to see from faculty from the programs that you graduated from to continue to assist you? And are there ways that you individually would like to be able to give back to students who are in those programs?
So I will let them answer this question first.
For me, just regular, this is Mark, for me, just regular contact, which I've had, fortunate to have with the German department. It makes you, keeps you aware of what they're doing, and it makes you interested in continuing to help push that mission forward. So, regular contact used to be letters, now it's email.
Yeah. And along with regular contact, now that we've moved to a remote platform, I know many of the professors, one in particular, Dr. Megan Church-Nally, in the organizational leadership department, she has reached out to me on a number of occasions to, participate in, any kind of discussion that she would like with her classes. So those kind of things as well are very helpful and very, to know that you're giving back to the university. Greatly appreciate that as well.
Yeah. And I would echo, staying connected. That's one thing that I've done pretty well with the journalism department. I need to do a better job with it in environmental. The context I had retired, so that's just one thing I need to work on. But even just like the department reaching out to their alumni too, because I actually used to work with Juliana in the alumni office, and not every department did that. So any way that they can reach out to us is great as well, to open that communication if they didn't have it before.
Mm-hmm. And I, as a member of the Alumni Association, am happy to help facilitate any connections between departments and alumni. So I'm here. Just reach out to me.
Yes. So if I remember, there was a part of that was for me, which was something about how should we engage alumni as faculty? Is that, did I have that down correctly? The first part of that.
The first part was what advice, suggestions, or methods do you recommend to faculty who want to remain in touch with alumni?
Well, I think so. I think there are two ways of looking at it, and it really is based on what kind of a relationship you already have with either discrete number of alumni or your alumni base, period. And I think that is something that we probably need to discuss at the level of departments and dean's office and the development and alumni office. And I think there can be better coordination between this, and this is certainly something that I've thought about from the beginning. We need to involve especially the faculty more, especially when we get to sort of the conversations where alumni are considering, for example, giving substantial amounts of money or an endowment or something like that to a unit. Is how do we make sure that the handoff, because to me what is crucial is, sure, we can do the initial contacts at the with Juliana, with me, with Mike Griffin and his team in development, but at a certain point, often the alumni want to be in touch with the faculty. They want to know what the faculty are doing in the departments. And so making sure that there is that kind of communication that goes back and forth so that we can put alumni in contact with the people that they want to hear from, because I don't have the knowledge that might inspire an alumnus or an alumna to give to a department because they feel that connection with what the faculty does that is connected with the experience that the alumni have, either through their job or even through their past, because they learned something and they had an experience that transformed their lives. So I think we need to do a better job of working together, but I hope we can get there.
Yeah, certainly. That's one thing I wanted to add as well. I think Thomas Mobley, Professor Mobley, in the organizational leadership department, he does an amazing job at engaging with alumni, particularly on the LinkedIn platform. So I just wanted to mention him. And great person, great professor to have as part of the department.
So, by the way, I see a comment by Chris about the biology alumni invited back to hear notable lectures or guest speakers related to my major at UC. We come back for sports, we come back to volunteer, but what we want to come back to reconnect to our academic specialty. I think I know that there are units, departments that do that actually send out mailings to alumni when they have events. So I think we might need to figure out how we do a better job in the specific unit like biology that you're talking about.
Okay, we just have a few more questions from our interviewers, and then I do have a few more from attendees that we'll get into when we finish. So Elaine, I think you're up next.
So we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are the best ways for alumni to reach out to students who are struggling, and how can we continue to support the mission of ANS?
So, well, I think the conduit for reaching out is probably best through, at this point, through the advising team, because the advising teams are the ones that would be able to actually tell you who the students are that are struggling. They also have data that can, depending on what the struggling you want to help with is, if it's, more sort of like a support structure, a mentor, a buddy system, that's probably it is one way. And if you also are thinking about, for example, stuff like emergency funds, then it's a different story. Then I think you would want to go through the development office. But advising is always a good place to start. And our senior assistant dean for academic success, Lisa Holmstrom, is probably the person that is the best conduit for some of that. And then, being able from there to get to because we are doing that right now. We actually have alumni that are involved, for example, with students who are still on the fence about coming back next year, contacting them, making sure that we understand what the reasons are, et cetera, et cetera.
That's cool.
Thanks.
Val, we've all seen people band together in the community to help those during this crisis. Specifically, I know there's a CCM grad who started Sew Masks for Cincinnati. Do we have any community members within ANS doing anything of which you're aware?
So I don't know about the community, but I can tell you about a couple of really, great examples of how we've turned around. So one of our staff members in chemistry and a couple of the faculty members at a certain point proposed that we collect all PPE that we had in especially our labs and this kind of stuff. And so we did, and it was like, I want to say it was over like 100,000 of these, especially the sort of the face at the time when they were sort of scarce. And then they they hand delivered it to UC Health, and so that that kind of stuff was really remarkable. I mean, how they went, they collected it. We even had a picture of the guy doing this. And this is a staff guy. I mean, this is someone who like just from nowhere connected. We connected him with some of the faculty. Other faculty joined in, and there was this big effort to kind of do something like that. I think, the more specific about how people are doing in communities. So I would like to tell you, Mark, that I do know, but I don't. And part of the problem is we haven't had the ability to get feedback a lot from what people have been doing. So I'm sure that people are doing really great things. And I know that there are people who are doing things. We just don't know the extent to which they're actually operating in their communities. We do know that people were, some of the faculty, I know this for a fact, were actually making masks, making things like that, and giving them to people in their communities to help out. I just don't know the extent of it, but I do know that these were and are still happening.
I guess we all need to publicize that as soon as we become aware of it.
Yeah,
Certainly.
we do.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly. So my next question I have is in regards to racial justice and kind of inclusive leadership and things of that nature. How can the university, in your opinion, respond in the wake of the death of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor?
You know,
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. And with the university in 2015, we dealt with the death of Sam Dubose. So the university is definitely has had been able with the former leadership of President Santa Ona has done a great job of kind of helping the university through that. What are some ways the university can respond to this?
I mean, so two things. I mean, I don't know that we can, that it is as specific as that, but I can tell you that we certainly can do a better job of how we do inclusive excellence and how we do, sort of the kind of work that needs to be done, which is much deeper than we think of. So I know, and I think I've told you this,
Yes.
but we have just sort of moved a position at the level of associate dean for inclusive excellence and community partnership.
Yes.
The person that we've selected is Dr. Letitia Bates, who is one of the co-founders of the Black Faculty Association on campus. She's tremendously energetic. She is the kind of person that can be transformational. And as I kind of jokingly said to her, you can kick my butt if I say the wrong thing. Because and I think that's really, we need someone like that who has that kind of passion and energy. And so, in fact, I just had today a 1 hour long conversation with her precisely about these topics, about how we do better in making this, for too many times, I think we think, okay, now we appoint someone in a position, we have done our, we've checked our box, we're okay, we've done, our inclusive excellence exercise, and it's so much deeper than that. We need to have transformational ideas for how we, in fact, do better at all levels of this. And I'm pretty confident that Dr. Bates is going to be the kind of person that really sort of energizes that whole enterprise. She is I think first of all, she's a courageous person, and I think she's the kind of person that will help all of us become a little bit more courageous in that sense.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to start asking some questions that have come in from our attendees. The first is in regards to funding from research and corporations. Other colleges have access to a significant amount of this funding. Does A&S have the same type of funding opportunities?
In terms of corporations and things like that, I'll sort of, first of all, I want to say that among the academic colleges, with the exception of the College of Medicine, this year A&S is the top fundraiser. So even better than the College of Business, which typically you would think of in a different way. So I want to say that we have really generous people in, corporation-wise, maybe a little bit different, although we have some very strong interest from a number of different groups. I mean, Procter & Gamble works with our chemistry, and General Electric works with our physics people. We have good connections there. We have, Kroger is starting to do some work with us in a different direction, especially with regards to sort of data analytics. So we have those. We actually have one company, I can't remember the name of it, that is really interested in our digital media programs. We're in conversations about the possibility of them sort of endowing a professorship. So there is, I think this is one of the things we need to do better. We certainly need to be more entrepreneurial, because the reality is that it is a good way, but I don't mean it just in terms of donations or gifts. I talk about it also like what kind of services can we do outside of what we do normally that in fact might generate revenues for us. And I know that there are departments that do that. And in fact, I mean, I'm positive that there are some that even I'm sure political science does it, communication does it. There are different departments that do a good job of actually leveraging the knowledge they have. And so we just need to do more of that. And but we are overextended sometimes, so we also have to take into consideration what are we really trying to do here. So until we get in a little bit more financially stable situation, it's going to take us a little bit longer.
And what about research dollars? assume that.
Dollars, yeah, we need to do better there too. I mean, we just hired a new grant person because we need to actually do a better job of both processing grants and making sure that when they're here, we maximize them. We need to think outside the box. I can tell you one thing, because there was a National Endowment for the Humanities grant for the to help, for example, staff in the humanities that might be furloughed. I and the divisional dean for the humanities and our grants office put together a grant proposal for one of these relief grants. I think sometimes that the dean's office has to be more involved as well. And so we're looking for those big grants as well from the dean's office, not just from the departments.
Okay. The next question is, what would you say to someone who says that universities no longer train students to think, but how to think?
So wait, they don't train them to think, but how to
train them how to think?
Well, so I actually want to say that we're the college that trains people to keep thinking. Not thinking in a specific way, but keeping. I think there is a very strong push to professionalize everything in a way that sometimes does not allow for the expansion of the brain in areas. I mean, look, creativity and fantasy, I truly believe sometimes you need those. You need to actually have a broader view of the world. And I think we do that in colleges of arts and sciences. We do that through our requirements that people have a broader education, a broader base. The phrase that I always cite is from a former provost, I think, at Barnard College, that says something: you want your mind to be an interesting place to live for the rest of your life. And I think that's really important to think about. And I think we do that. And if we can do that well, then we can actually have people who think and think creatively and are able also to think that their position may be not always right, and that sometimes they need to rethink their things and not be focused only in one direction.
Okay. The next question I have is a specific literature question. In the interest of time, I'm only going to read the questions that I have received at this point. So I think these are the last two, I believe. The question is, what do you think of the meaning of the relationship between Dr. Roux and Theroux in The Plague? You mentioned that it was good reading for the time period, and this person also read it. So they want to know how you interpret the friendship and how we use learnings from the novel to improve the situation within our own lives.
Well, I mean, I could go into a long sort of discussion about how the plague is part of, sort of this, the existential, right? I mean, Camus was a non-believer, right? I mean, so in his view, the plague is really the heroism of the humanist that in some ways sees a fellow man and is motivated by that relationship. And so the conversations, I think, are a way to, in fact, unpack that conversation. I mean, and or that intellectual thinking by Camus about we're all in a desperate world and we're all living meaningless lives, but what gives us meaning is actually caring for other people. And I think that's sort of what that dialogue, that conversation creates. And that's, to me, also what the plague is about, right? I mean, the plague is about if you don't believe and yet you see your fellow human suffering as a doctor, what do you do? To engage other people as opposed to sitting on the sidelines and watching. So I think that is at least one of the meanings that I take out of that book.
Okay. And it looks like I don't actually have any more questions. The last one was just a comment for faculty in regards to raising money for their own departments. If they're more connected to the department, they'd be more willing to make a gift back to it. So that's just something to keep in mind.
All right.
But those are all the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you, Dr. Fairmay, or any of the alumni would like to share before we sign off?
Well, the only thing that I will share is and people who know me, and some of you know me, I've always said, if you have anything, just write me an email. I'll try to get back to you. I know that Mark does that frequently. We have these early morning emails, like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Mark will send me something and I'll sort of write back, or something like, oh, I already saw that article, or that's an interesting article, read this, something like that. So we do have that little sort of back and forth, but that's an open offer to anybody to just do that for, if you want.
Yes. Dean Fairmay does respond to his own emails. That's pretty amazing, actually. So
Right.
It's good. It's good. I like it for answering email.
All right, well, that's all for us today. Thank you to Elena and Maurice and Mark for participating in this very exciting inaugural WebEx. And thank you for your time, Dr. Fairmay. I've gotten some positive comments from the attendees, so I deem this a success. I will do some more in the future, and I would certainly be open to suggestions from the alumni attendees here on future event ideas. So thank you, everybody. Have a very nice evening and a nice Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you very much. Take care.
have a great one, everyone. Enjoy.
Bye-bye. Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.